Christmas. Merry Christmas. Good to see all of you here this morning. This is a great time to celebrate. I'm looking forward to this time of year. I enjoy being able to be with all of you because week to week, so many things happen. So much is busy, but it's great to just be together and to be able to worship and to think about who Jesus really is. Obviously, some things are on purpose today of what we've been doing. We made sure that it definitely spoke Christmas to you when you came in. And I'm thankful for all the team that put this together to make sure that our environment looks like we celebrate something big around here, especially this time of year. And we do. I'm excited about that. But before we do, I'm here to give you a warning today. I hope that's okay. A warning is, I think, important. Many times we have people that come into our life and they express things to us. They give you advice. And I have someone that I just, this morning, I feel like I need to just kind of call them out and say that I've received advice a lot of times in my life from this person, and over again, it seems that advice lets me down. And I'm just kind of, I feel like I want you guys to be aware of it too, because you may have someone similar like that in your life. And this person gave me a business card, and I feel like I probably should share that business card with you so you know about this person and what I've experienced. I've experienced some really tough, let down things for me with this person. And so it seems like every time I go to them for this, it just happens. So let me put it up here for you. This is the business card of the person, and has always seemed to bring me to a point and then just goof it all up for me. If you don't know and you're new today, welcome. First of all, Merry Christmas, glad you're here and everything, but this is me, all right, if you're wondering who this is. Isn't it true that we go lots of times when we have things in our life where we are trying to make a decision, and the propensity is for us to go and to do it by going to ourselves first for the advice. We do it because we want to feel good about it. We want to feel like we're the one in charge many times, like we're the most influential person. And in a sense, we kind of are the most influential person that we deal with, because we are constantly in our own head, talking to ourselves, giving ourselves advice, making decisions. And the problem is that we don't necessarily listen to other counsel like we should. We don't necessarily listen to the people around us, or maybe we don't have a reliable source to go to when things are difficult for us to understand, especially when it comes to prioritizing what's most important in life. And when it comes down to it, whenever I've gone to this person, I can tell you that from time to time, I've gone to the right person and the right source, and I've gone to a good counselor. But then a lot of the times I've just taken my own advice, or I've just listened to myself, and I find that I just complicate things more. And so I want to ask you a question today, and I want you to think about this a little bit. What would it take, and what would make you go to talk to a counselor? I mean, what would it take in your life? What would it be that would bring about something in your life that you would go talk to a counselor? Now, I want to make sure that we understand that it is a good thing if you're in need to speak to someone and go to a good counselor, all right? I have done this in my life. I have gone at times in my life where my own advice obviously got me into a place where I could not get out of, and I've needed help. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what would it take in your life. And many of these things that I'll describe, are things that maybe you've experienced. So maybe it could be that you have many things in your life that would do it, but maybe one would be this. You're having intense feelings of sadness, or you're ready to give up. It could be something as difficult as that. It could be that you've run out of advice from family and friends. You've gone to them, and it feels like they're telling you the same thing over and over again, and it may be even that they're telling you the right thing, but it just is right now, it's like falling on your own deaf ears. You just don't know what to do with that, and you don't think that it's helping. It could be that you're using unhealthy ways of coping, such as like alcohol, drugs, porn, food, excessive sleep, binging games or TV, or overworking. And I'll admit to you, I struggle with that last one myself. I tend to do that a lot. And not that it's even being required of me. I require it of myself many times. And so we all have those things. But maybe it's even you're dealing with a chronic health issue. Or maybe a loved one that you know is dealing with a chronic health issue. And it's just an incredible burden to you right now. But maybe that would make you think about going to a counselor. It could be that you're going through big changes in your life. You know, it may be at work, it may be health related, it could be in your finances, it could be in your family or your relationships, but you're going through incredible change. They're big ones. Maybe you've suffered loss. Maybe someone that has been a mainstay in your life for so long, you've just suffered loss. They're not there anymore. For one reason or another, either the relationship was broken off or perhaps they even aren't living any longer. Maybe you feel like you're just having a loss of control. There's no way to even describe what it feels like in your mind and your heart. It feels like everywhere you go that things are just out of control and you've lost any semblance of it in your life. It could be that you're dealing with family or relationship issues. Christmas time is always one of those times where they tend to come out a lot more. And so it's kind of hard to deal with it. It could be that you're dealing with a blended family situation, or you're dealing with in-laws or outlaws. You're having to try to figure your way through how you're going to spend time with them or what you're going to say. Could be tough. Maybe it just comes down to you feel all alone. You just don't feel like there's anyone on your side or there's anyone to talk to. These are the things that maybe have made you think about going to a counselor, or maybe even more so, you were let down by someone you trusted. Maybe somebody you trusted with your life, they just let you down to the point that you don't know if you can trust anyone anymore, including the fact that maybe you just feel like God let you down. You feel like maybe the whole thing has turned into that. And I know that if we were all honest, that everyone in this room has probably experienced one of those, at least, if not more than one. And so it's very difficult if we go to ourselves for the advice, because we have a very limited ability to be able to speak truth into our own life. So I have a name of a really great counselor for you. A really great counselor. Someone who you can trust completely. Someone that you can trust implicitly with your secrets. Matter of fact, this person could probably almost complete your sentences. I'm sure he could. Why? Because he knows you and is interested in you. He's done everything possible to be in your life and in your circumstances and situation right now. And we go back in history to find the source, to find the one, the counselor that we're talking about. Now, it's not hard to figure out, right, who we're talking about today. I mean, if I just gave you the name of a counselor that you could go see in an office, it would be something else. But today, this is different. You never have to worry about being put on a waiting list for an appointment. You never have to worry about whether or not it's going to be consistent advice or whether it's going to be something that comes from somebody who understands your situation. You want somebody who's had the experience, who understands and knows everything before it even is going to happen to you. You want to go to this counselor. This counselor is going to give you the answers you need. But first, you've got to take the step to say, by faith, I'm going to believe that. And I'm going to trust it enough to give him that opportunity to speak into my life. If you don't do that, if you're here today and you say, I've been trying to do this, or I have been a believer for a long time, I have followed God for a long time, but it just feels like God is disconnected from me. For whatever reason, I feel numb to it. I just don't know how to deal with that. Maybe it's even someone who's skeptical about faith and you've walked away from faith in the past or something has happened, but now you're here today and you're hearing this and it maybe is resonating that those maybes are something that might have driven you to a counselor. Then let's ask this question. Would you take it to somebody you know is the most reliable counselor possible? Of course. Of course, we'd all want to do that. So we go back in history to a prophet. His name was Isaiah. Isaiah was at a time when Israel, if you go back into the ancient Jewish scriptures of the Old Testament, you find Isaiah was speaking to King Ahaz. He spoke to King Hezekiah, all in the front part of this letter, not really a letter, a prophecy, a collection of poems and different things that he wrote and spoke to this king of Israel. And Israel was headed down a path. Let me tell you something. They were headed down a path of trying to be impressive to everyone around them. And they would do anything. The kings would many times compromise who they were as a country to give up on the one true God to actually make a relationship possible with other nations around them. And they wanted to be impressive. They wanted everyone to see who they were and how great they were. The problem was that they had disconnected themselves completely from God. And so if you look at Isaiah, you're going to find some incredible statements that Isaiah is making. Matter of fact, Isaiah used the phrase, "Thus saith the Lord," and the concept is that he was speaking on behalf of God. And he was speaking directly to the leaders of Israel, but also to that whole nation. And this was hundreds of years before what we would celebrate as the coming of Jesus on his birthday, his Christmas, this Christmas when he would come. And so when we look at this passage of Scripture, we see a description of something. But before we look at it, I want to read to you what the circumstances were like. And so we go to Isaiah chapter 8, and I just want you to listen to this. The words are not on the screen. I want you to listen carefully as I read it. It says, "When someone tells you to consult mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not people inquire of their God?" This is Isaiah speaking to Israel, because Israel was doing that very thing. It says, "Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Consult God's instruction and the testimony of warning. If anyone does not speak according to this word, they have no light of dawn. Distressed and hungry, they will roam through the land. When they are famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward, will curse their king and their God. Then they will look toward the earth and see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom, and they will be thrust into utter darkness." The people had completely turned their back on God. They had taken their own advice. King Ahaz had taken his own advice. And it had been one of these things where he had led them to a certain point to where now Israel was so far away from God that they only would do the one thing when speaking to him was to curse him instead of acknowledging who he was. And so now what happens? Well, chapter 9 starts out this way. This tells you that this is the counselor you want to go to. This is the one that you want to trust. Even though they had separated themselves from God and their life was full of utter darkness. I mean, it was just distress. It was awful. This is what Isaiah says on behalf of God. "Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. And in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land and of deep darkness, a light has dawned." All of this, God had seen and promised great hope for them. And then in chapter 9, just a few verses after he says this, that there will be a dawning, there will be light finally come in a time of distress and darkness. It was awful. I mean, the way they were living, they were so far from God, it seemed as if they had been cursed. And they brought it on themselves because they took their own advice. They took their own advice and decided to follow themselves rather than God. And God said, nevertheless, I'm still going to bring something good to you. I'm still going to bring something good to you. No matter what kind of mess you've gotten yourselves into, no matter how deep and dark your situation is, God is definitely going to come in and he's going to bless them with light. Now, this is what he describes in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. This is what is described will happen. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. Both things here indicate the fact that a child, someone would come in the flesh. But to us a son is given, meaning that he was deity, that it was going to be God in the flesh, and the government will be on his shoulders. In other words, he's going to have true authority and power, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now, I want to describe something here to you. This actually, if you were to take the Hebrew and you were to look at it, these are not necessarily, in the English translation of Scripture, they put it into names, but it actually is a long description of who this one would be. He was going to be someone who would come in, who would be a marvelous one, who would bring marvelous counsel, and he would be a mighty God who would be in charge of everything from forever, and he would bring a sense of peace and gratification to all. He would give this fulfillment to anyone who would accept it. That's what he really truly is. So if we were to take this first description, Wonderful Counselor, a wonderful counselor, I want to show you the Hebrew words. Okay, I'm going to teach you a little Hebrew this morning. And the word wonderful actually is Pele. Can you say that with me? Pele, not Pele, like soccer. Okay? It's Pele. All right? So say it again with me. Pele. And it means a wonder, a plan of something marvelous. All right? Far beyond any description, this word is not used much because it kind of says, I can't really describe it. So here's a word to try to describe it. And then the word wonderful, meaning that. Counselor means, or you pronounce it yoetz. All right? It looks like yoes, but it's yoetz. All right? Say that with me. Yoetz. So Pele yoetz is what he calls him, a wonderful counselor. It means that there's advice that will correct the direction. See, it was something needed for Israel, yes. But remember, every time you read Scripture, know that it was written to someone, but it was written for us. And so every time you see this, you know that Jesus actually is described now. He's this child who would be born, and he would be a son who would have royalty or deity about him, and he would be this wonderful counselor, a yoetz. He would give this incredible kind of advice and counsel. Matter of fact, Isaiah, when describing it and using wonderful counselor, he used words that said there are no words great enough. That's kind of the words he was using. Those words, a wonderful counselor that we come up with, it sounds great in a song, but it really comes down to it that it's indescribable who he really is. Matter of fact, he's the indescribable, and this is what I came up with my definition, indescribable giver of spot-on advice. That's who he is. That's who Jesus is. As a result of what he's trying to explain to them, you need to have hope. And see, this was hundreds of years. Isaiah is telling this hundreds of years before Jesus had ever come on the scene. But he was trying to give them hope. Hey, listen, don't forget this is going to happen. And when it does, he's going to be this wonderful counselor. And you can actually trust him for this spot-on advice now. God was wanting them, follow me now, knowing that I'm providing for you this one who would come. And even in that time, God was saying, nevertheless, no matter how you react, no matter what you're going to do, I'm still going to do this for you. I'm still doing this. God never, ever came to a point to say, I'm taking back that promise. You ever had somebody promise you something and then take it back? You know? Hopefully that happened to you when you were on the playground years ago. But a lot of us have experienced that, where we've been promised something and somebody takes the promise back, or they don't ever fulfill the promise. And that can be a real problem. I want to tell you, I want to go to someone who's going to help me through times like that, somebody who's an indescribable giver of spot-on advice. Now we go back to the passage, and I want to show you this. In Isaiah, it just continues on. It says, of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom. It obviously is the one who was talked about, the Messiah who would be the one promised, because all through history, dating all the way back, and Isaiah knew this when telling them this, remember back when he promised to Abraham, when he started this nation of Israel, when he started it all with Abraham and Sarah, and they had a child, and from there, that nation continued to grow, and it became numerous people. They went through so many times of God providing for them, and then them turning their back, and then God taking care of them. Just like he's saying again in this passage, it's going to happen. But this is the same one promised that would come through the line of David. So there's no question about who he's talking about here. Hundreds of years before Jesus was ever on the scene on this earth, you see that God had promised through the prophet Isaiah that there's going to be this one. And it goes on that establishing and upholding it, meaning his kingdom, this field, with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. When we speak of the Lord Almighty, the strongest names possible that could be given, it means this. When saying the Lord, it means that he is Yahweh, the one true God, the only one, who's almighty, who will do anything to go beyond our barriers in relationship to be together with him. And this is really what it comes out to mean. The one true God, a one true relational God will do this. He will accomplish this. This zeal that God Almighty has, he will be the one to accomplish it. So you're wondering, how can I know that God is not going to give up on me? How do I know that God hasn't given up on me? How do I know that if I go to him for counsel that I'm not going to just hear a lot of judgment? And a lot of times that's what we feel is going to be the case. But actually, even in the fact of him saying to them, look, you're in darkness now, but someday, nevertheless, I'm going to bring light to you. Even in showing them this and pointing out the things they needed to correct, even showing them the things they needed to change about themselves, everything that he pointed out, God was saying, I'm a relational God who will accomplish this. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish it. And now we know, looking back, all right, in history we see it. We celebrate now what has happened. We celebrate that promise that has taken place, that Isaiah prophesied about it. He said and promised, God promised through Isaiah the prophet. He said, there's going to be this one, this child born, this son given. He's going to have the authority. He's going to come in. He's going to be this wonderful counselor that you need. And in doing that Pele Yoetz, that giver of unbelievable, spot-on advice. Who is that? Jesus, the wonderful counselor. Jesus is the one you can go to no matter what the circumstances are. Now I want to show you something that is so important. We sang about this earlier, and we'll actually look at the verse next Sunday as we kind of unveil this even more. But in Isaiah chapter 7, it speaks of this one who would come as Emmanuel. Emmanuel means, anybody know what it means? So shout it out if you know the name. God with us, that's right. Very good. Now, if truly this means God with us, it doesn't mean that God came here and was far aloof from everyone. He came here and actually took on flesh, the same flesh we have, and on purpose so that he could literally understand what we were going through. So he would be able to stand in our place and be able to understand our circumstance. You ever had somebody come up to you and give you advice or try to be your counselor, and they don't have a clue what you're going through? Yeah? You ever had anybody do that to you? You know, hey, it's going to be just fine, blah, blah, blah. You know, just pick yourself up. You'll be fine. You know, you got friends. You got this. There's plenty of fish in the sea. Whatever, no matter what's going on in your life, right? All kinds of things that people will say to you. Oh, I know. It'll be tough, but you'll feel better soon. You know? Or, why don't you just get up and do something? Don't why are you just sitting around being all depressed and everything? Just get up and do something. Let's go to the store. I don't want to go to the store. I don't want to do that. I don't want to shop. I don't want to be around the family. Get my point? Ever had anybody do that to you? Where they give you advice and they've never been there? They've never gone through it. It's a hard thing, and I'm going to share this with you. I've been there recently. A couple of years ago, my sister contracted COVID, and she contracted COVID on Christmas Eve. She found out that she had it, and I spoke to her on Christmas Eve, and I said, I was trying to figure out when we could get together and everything through the holidays, and they had been very busy. We've been super busy, and it was like, how can we get together? We want to make sure we have plans for that. And she said, well, you're not going to be able to come for a while. I have COVID. Oh, no, how are you feeling, and everything. She said, well, right now I'm just tired. I think I'm going to be okay. 2 days later, my sister was taken to the hospital, and she was put in ICU, put on a vent, and within a week, my sister was in heaven. I didn't even get a chance to talk to her. I didn't get a chance to see her again. They put her in the hospital so quickly, I didn't even get a chance to talk to her. I went down there. I pulled the pastor card. The one you saw there. I pulled the pastor card out, and I went up to the thing, and I said, I need to see this woman on behalf of the family, which is true, okay? But I just wanted to see her. But she was sedated. She didn't know I was there. They wouldn't let me go into the room where she was for obvious reasons. I had multiple layers of masks on. I have never worn that many masks. They made me wear 3 masks. The whole point was, though, I just wanted to see my sister. And, I'm very thankful for this church family because nobody said, it'll be okay, Greg, no problem. Because you didn't do that to me. But I will tell you that I had people who never lost a loved one like that close to you, and you think to yourself, how in the world will I ever get through this? And people just kind of give you advice that doesn't go anywhere. You ever experienced that? They can't understand because they haven't gone through that kind of loss. We both lost our parents early, and so my sister and I, we had this kind of a bond or relationship, and there's not a day goes by still to this day that I don't think of her and wish I could call her and talk to her. And when somebody says, man, I know how you feel, my first reaction tends to be sometimes, do you? Jesus, the wonderful counselor, he understands. In Hebrews chapter 4, and I want to read this and conclude with this. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. You know what empathy is, right? Sympathy and empathy are different. Sympathy is when you're trying to express to someone that you feel sad for them. You show them sympathy. But empathy is someone who gets it. They've been there. They've lost somebody. They've gone through that issue where they needed, they've gone through it. And you're more likely to listen to them, right, for their advice. You're more likely to take in what they have to share with you, the counsel they may give you, if they've been through that too, or they've been through something similar to where their heart hurt like your heart hurts, or your loss is the same as their loss, and you can relate to them. Someone who maybe goes through depression or anxiety, especially this time of year, and you hear them talk about it too because they go through it. They empathize with you. Listen to what it says one more time. For we do not have a high priest, meaning Jesus. He stepped into our place to die for us and to pay for our sin, who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. See, Jesus came here on purpose so he could be the wonderful counselor, so that he could actually have experienced the things that we experience. And he did it as God, perfect in human form. He then is able to empathize. He was tempted. He went through loss. He went through times. I mean, one of the closest people in his life was John the Baptist, his cousin, and he went through the loss, an unfair, unjust loss of that loved one. He went through the different things that hit every one of us. He went through it so that he could empathize. He could say, I've been there. I know how you feel. I know. The thing is that in doing that, being able to do it from that standpoint, it opens everything up. Let me show you. The verses go on and it says, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Thank goodness he didn't sin, because that's what makes him that wonderful counselor. He can empathize with our situation, but he can offer new direction and peace, and he can take us through that. He can get us through the other side of what's going on there, but we have to be willing to let that happen. And so the verses go on, and this is what he says is the best advice. Let us then approach God's throne. Do you know what that means, to approach God's throne? The throne of God, the God of the universe. We can approach God's throne, and it's grace. That's what he has. This throne is built on grace. Many times we think of a throne or something as someone there for judgment. And yes, God can determine between what's right and what's wrong, and what is justice and what needs to happen, and all of that. But the throne is described when we approach it, and we're approaching it because we want that wonderful counselor to speak to us. It is all grace. And it gives us the confidence to move forward. I love this. So that we may receive mercy and, say it with me, find grace. You see, mercy and grace is the greatest gift this counselor can give us, right? In our circumstances, I don't know what would have driven you to see a counselor, or what's actually driven you to see a counselor now. You're already maybe in the process of that. But think about this. When we approach God, we approach him from this, and he comes back to us because we've received grace and mercy, and this is what we find. We find that grace and mercy to help us in our time of need. So if you're looking for wise counsel, you're looking for that wonderful counselor, you're looking for the one, that's what Jesus can do. That's who God is. The majesty of his throne and everything about it. If you just start to open your heart and mind to think about who God is and what he has to offer, and you start to think about this and think to the fact that God wants you to come to him and approach him because he has a gift for you. Mercy and grace in your time of need. I wrote this statement. I hope it would be true for you too. But I need the wonderful counselor to save me from my own advice, because I'm not a very good advice giver when it comes to my own life, and help when life is complicated, because it is. So what do you do? If this is true, a lot of us are like, okay, those are great. It's almost like platitudes in a way, isn't it? Like these are things, but here's some very just straightforward advice. If you go to a counselor, especially if you pay money to go to a counselor, you're going to try to get something from it. Right? You want some help. So if you're going to go to this wonderful counselor, what do? What's the best advice I can give you because of what I've experienced, that when I go to Jesus, what any of us who have done this would say is this. First of all, tell him everything on your mind. Tell him everything that you're going through. Tell him the things and be honest. Don't hold back. He already knows your secrets, so you might as well have an open, honest conversation with him about that. And when you do, it is freedom like you would not believe, to be able to share what's on your heart and not hold back, and know that he is not there ready to cut you off at the ankles, but to offer you mercy and grace. Isn't that a great thing? You can approach him boldly and tell him whatever's on your mind. I don't know why my sister died. I don't understand it. My sister had plenty more years. Her and her husband had just celebrated 50 years, and we had plans. We were gonna try to orchestrate a trip to go out and to see Yellowstone National Park. Wanted to be able to do that with her, just to be able to do some of those. My goal was to get her on an airplane. Never got that opportunity. God, I don't understand that. Why? Why does that kind of thing happen to me? You're going to be honest with a counselor. You want help from a counselor. What do? You tell them everything that's on your mind. And then be quiet and listen to everything he says. You ever talk to somebody and try to help them? Not to mention anybody, your children, all right, that would do this. But you try to give them some advice, and what do? They try to overtalk you, or they talk, and they won't listen, whatever. Okay? Ever had that happen? Sure. We all have been through that. Listen, you think God ever gets tired of that? No, he just is patient, and he's there. Be quiet and listen to everything he says. And the greatest way we do this is by opening God's word and reading it. Let me tell you, you're looking for something to do in the next weeks. You're a couple days behind, but you could read one chapter out of the book of Luke and just read the account of from his birth all the way through to the life of Jesus and his disciples, all of that. You could read that between now and Christmas Eve, and you'd have a chapter a day. Let me just tell you, listen to what he says. And then, this is very practical, all right? Do everything he says. Just do it. If God's giving you advice, if you hear that, you know what's right, you know what's next, then do it. A lot of us in this room would say, I've heard this before. Thank you, Greg. Can I get out of here? I think there's still donuts in the lobby. But I want to tell you this. This is important. As much as I would love to just turn you loose, here's what I'd say. If you don't know what to do with this and you look at it and you say, I just don't know, you ask for help. That's what you do. Ask for help. And you go to the counselor and you're like, I just don't know how to navigate this, then go to somebody. Go for help. First of all, after this service is over today, there'll be someone right over here, a team of people ready to pray with you if you wanted to pray through a circumstance or situation. And they would be able to give you some practical next steps you can take. So that would be right after this service. The second thing would be this. I want you to think about doing this. I want you to text the word help to 937-879-1598. Okay? Get out your phone. Okay? Text to that number. If you're like, I don't know where that number is, you just go to the church website, go to the social media. You can find the phone number, okay? Go to the church app, whatever you need to do. The phone number is easy to find, but just text the word help. Not a lot of people are going to see this, okay? I'm going to tell you, this is coming to me, okay? And if it's a female within the church, then it will go to somebody, a lady who will help you in that. And you also could email. I don't text. Don't do that. Then email to the address help@faircreek.org and just say, I need somebody to help me get in touch with the wonderful counselor. I need help with that. It could be the best Christmas ever, you know? So the one thing you can do today is, does this make sense? That you'd want to go to a counselor who knows you and understands the circumstance, someone who is the Hale Yoetz, marvelous giver, indescribable giver of spot-on advice. You want to see that and you want that in your life, then take the step necessary. It could be the greatest thing ever in your life. It could set you up for an incredible 2024 to get through the complications of life, no matter what. I want to say this before I pray and we're on our way. You're going to have opportunities throughout this month to interact with people, just like Kelly mentioned. I'm going to ask you that we've bundled these invite cards. Please take a bundle with you. There's 5 in the bundle. Take them and invite people to come and to hear about the Pele Yoetz. Let them hear about those things, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. all the way through to Christmas Eve, all of these things that we're doing are on purpose. Not for just us, but for us to share that